Hey guys, I'm here with Danny Camargo at Altamont CrossFit and Altamont Weightlifting. He is actually my strength coach. He's been coaching me for the last 2 years in Olympic lifting before I started coming back into the sport of swimming. And he's still writing my strength programs today. I actually go to him for my strength and conditioning. So today I wanted to give you guys kind of an inside look at what I'm doing strength and conditioning wise. And Danny, go ahead and just give yourself a little bit of an introduction and talk about some of your accolades as an Olympic weightlifter.
Well, my name is Danny Camargo. I am the owner of Altamont CrossFit and Sports Performance. When asked that question, I often tell people I'm currently 36 years old, and I learned the snatch and clean and jerk when I was 12. I had amazing coaches, took me really, really far in Olympic weightlifting at a young age, in a time when no one cared about Olympic lifting. And these coaches took me to a very elite level. I was a U.S. team member. I broke several junior American records, competed in 9 international competitions, 4 of which were world championships for weightlifting. I retired by age 21 and started coaching pretty much right away, and I've been coaching ever since. So I'm 16 years in to my coaching career. Currently, I'm a U.S. international level coach with USA Weightlifting.
Awesome. And kind of getting into that just a little bit further, expand a little bit on all the roles that you take on in addition to being an international coach and a business owner. Kind of what all do you have your feet in, so to speak?
And that's a really great question, because all I ever wanted to do was just coach. Mm-hmm. It started off with just coaching. And in fact, there's a lot of times where all of the roles I play, I wish that's all that I could do and would do.
Right.
But I decided after becoming a coach, I jumped into a head coach's position pretty early in my coaching career at a club level. And taking that club and growing the program and using that, the Olympic lifts and everything that we do in the training regimen for other sports, sports performance, kind of just grew. I met CrossFit back in 2007. I'm 7 years involved now with CrossFit, and in 2009 opened this gym now, CrossFit Gym. So I am a business owner, I'm the head coach, I'm the head programmer.
Okay.
I do private lessons. I'm also an Olympic weightlifting specialist for CrossFitters who compete in CrossFit when they need to work on that modality. And so I don't quite do remote coaching. By definition, remote coaching doesn't quite fit what I like to do.
Right.
I have what I call satellite athletes, in that I will program them. Like yourself, I will program several athletes, and my requirement is that it's not all done online. I have to see them at least once a month minimum and physically see them do my workouts. If they can meet those requirements for me, then I will do that extended satellite training for them. But traditionally, remote coaching, where I never meet the people, I don't want to write programs for someone I'll never meet.
Right.
So it's quite taxing, and my schedule is extremely tight between the administrative side of a business, growing my label and what I do, and coaching full-time for athletes who depend on me full-time for whatever goal they may have.
Sure. Now, for those of us who don't know, or for those who are watching this video and aren't really very familiar with Olympic weightlifting or the sport of weightlifting, kind of just briefly explain what it is and what the events are.
The Olympic sport of weightlifting, and I always tell people this when I get this question, the word weightlifting, one word, capital W, refers to the sport of weightlifting. And not weight lifting separate, which is
right, because a lot of people, when
training.
you say you're a weightlifter, they don't understand what that really means. They think you go to the gym and do curls or something.
They think you're involved in resistance training.
Yep.
And that's about where it ends. Or they confuse it with powerlifting.
Right.
You know, great sport in and of itself too, but it's different. They have different events. The sport of Olympic weightlifting then are 2 events called the snatch and the clean and jerk. Competitors have 3 tries in each event to do as much as they can. The highest in each comes together for a total that they add, and that total wins the overall. Certain championship tournaments will treat the snatch individually, and you can medal separately for that, as well as the clean and jerk, and then the overall it could be. So potentially 3 medals weightlifters can earn. What people don't understand about Olympic weightlifting is that it's not just how much you can lift. That is, of course, how you win in the end. But what many years and decades I've been involved in weightlifting, people don't understand is that you also get judged on your form and your technique. So it is possible to successfully lift weight over your head, expecting it to be considered a good lift. But if you violate any technical rules, and they're very, very strict, and the standard on it is very tough. If you break any of those rules, that effort was a whole bunch of effort for nothing, for a no.
Sure.
And so you don't get credited with the lift because of the violation of these really, really sharp technical rules.
Right. Now, for those of us who are athletes that aren't strength sport athletes, a lot of people hear the term Olympic lifts thrown around and being used in sports performance. Why do you think that athletes are often looking to use Olympic lifting for sports performance?
Explosion. I would say the explosive power of the large muscle groups in our body that we need most, for speed or what have you. That'd be the number one. They certainly wouldn't use Olympic lifting for metabolic conditioning or overall stamina or endurance. They would use it to be powerful and in your case, coming off the start faster.
Right.
In the case of track and field, coming out to start. Football, being more agile on the field, changing directions as you're running. So I think all sports have been more and more in my lifetime turning to the Olympic lifts, the snatch and the clean and jerk, and all the variations you can come up with to be quicker, to be much faster and stronger on whatever field of play they have.
Sure. Now, describe briefly your training philosophy as a coach.
Well, overall, it's multi-level. I can't answer that question with just one sentence. I think in order for me, in my experience, to answer that question, it would have to be more specific, like what is my philosophy on a particular aspect of what we do.
Right.
But having said that, my number one philosophy is that it doesn't matter what you do in training. And I tell my athletes that all the time. It doesn't matter what my athletes do in training. It matters what they do at the tournament. And so we train for tournaments, of course. We're competitors. And it's wonderful that training gives us that guideline to help us prepare for a tournament and what we can expect out of ourselves at the meet. But PRs are wonderful in training. Maximal lifts are great in training. Achievements and wonderful when you're practicing, but it's all for nothing if you can't do it in front of the judges when it counts most.
Sure.
And I developed that over the years because I would constantly have my athletes come in with videos of other competitors that they have seen in their respective gyms, posting on YouTube what they can do in training with the aid of straps or other things like the comfort in their gym. But I always told them, don't get distracted by that. It only matters the day of the competition.
Right.
That's my overall philosophy and spirit of training. And when it comes down to specifics, like let's say programming, I believe in periodization. I have traditionally done the regular periodization. However, there are times, and depending on the athlete, I might undulate that periodization, and I believe in that too. And that probably comes from the way I was trained as a lifter.
Okay. Since you've been coaching me, you've been peaking me for a competition in the water roughly every 6 to 8 weeks so far, and that's how we've been kind of doing our strength work. Just kind of briefly go over how you divide up our training cycles going into a swimming.
Well, it was really unique because I'll admit that in the process of designing the workout, for your goals or any athletes, I have to start by evaluating what their goal is, and I base all of my programming solely on the athlete's end goal of their respective sport. In your case, swimming. So what I did was I looked at when you expected to peak in your swimming and piggybacked off that. In a way, it was really easy to map out. What made it difficult is, of course, the specific reps and sets to give you so that I can avoid overtraining, any aches or pains or injuries. That's the hardest part. But mapping out When I wanted you to peak in weightlifting terms is complete opposite spectrum of when you needed to peak for swimming.
Right.
And so they kind of just crossed paths. When you were in your most intense time period of training, I was in my lightest form of training, right? For weightlifting, at least it goes. When you were in your lightest section of your swim and you were preparing for what would be later intensity in swimming, that's when I hit you the hardest.
Right.
And so I wouldn't say it was a mirror. I didn't mirror your training, but kept opposite of your training.
Right. And I should note that in swimming, there's kind of a traditional view of periodization or peaking where swimmers will only peak like once or twice a season, which is a lot different from how we're doing it, and we're seeing a lot of success like that. And now when I was competing as a weightlifter for you, we also roughly peaked about every 6 weeks or so, right?
Yes.
And it's worked really well, and we're seeing a lot more consistent improvements that way. And so I just kind of want to note that these shorter training cycles are allowing us to make these improvements and swim faster a little bit more often.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, the reason why I like 6 to 8 weeks is I'm able to give accurate subsequent cycles. I have written as long as 18-week cycles, 16 weeks, 12 weeks. And I'm not a fan of those because not only does it take the coach a ton of time to do, but by the time the athlete reaches the end of the 12 to 18 weeks, if they've been logging like they should have been logging, you'll see that the adjustments you make along the way end up looking nothing like what you first mapped out.
Right.
And so instead of spending all this time for 18 weeks when it's going to change anyways, I like those 6 to 8 weeks. I think it's enough stimulus I can cycle through without overtraining. And I know that every time I rewrite something for you, it is accurately based on where we just came from. Like checkpoints along the way, I think.
Right. Yeah, and that's helped us going through the first. We've gone through 3 training cycles, 3 swim meets so far, and each one has gotten better. And we've communicated in between each and talked about if we need to change anything. And we haven't really changed a lot because it's been working really well, but we've been able to make some small tweaks and have seen those improvements. Has there been anything else that you've had to change, maybe like exercise selection-wise or anything, training me for swimming as opposed to weightlifting?
Very minimal. Because our goal, my plan for you when I wrote your strength and conditioning was treat you like a weightlifter. Everywhere that I could. And almost train you backwards, as we discussed, for a weightlifting meet, even though that's not where you were going.
Right.
And the reason I say that is because the benefit of all of the movements we do transferred into what you needed. So yeah, there were a few exercise things I don't think that I would that I kept because I may be more specific for a weightlifting tournament. But by and large, I trained you like a lifter, so everything remained the same.
The old school swim mentality is put off strength training and weightlifting for a long time. Usually either kind of late teenage years, at the end of high school, or even putting it off until you get to college. What are your thoughts on delaying getting into the weight room that long for an athlete?
I think it puts an athlete behind the curve. I am a product of specializing Olympic lifting at such a young age, 12, as I said at the beginning of this interview. I had a wonderful career, and I was blessed in a few different ways because of my coaches. Because weightlifting is not dangerous, poor coaching is dangerous.
Right.
And so that would be my first recommendation is if anyone asks me this question, a parent asks me, can I get my child started, my child athlete started in weight training at an early age, I would say yes, properly.
Right.
I think if you wait for puberty, post-puberty, because society has traditionally felt that's safer, you're behind.
Right.
Now, muscularly, maybe not. But what Olympic weightlifting does for the athletes at a young age, neurologically, and for their skeletal system and bone density, I think sets them, prepares them for whatever you give them as they get older.
Sure.
At the young age, 10, 11, 12 is when I would prefer to start athletes. No matter what sport they play. I prefer to start them that young. I am not training them for one maximal repetition. I'm training the coordination, the balance, the flexibility, and a little bit of mental toughness.
Yeah.
I love that.
And a lot of people forget that. They think, oh, you're weightlifting. They just assume that means you're lifting as heavy as you can all the time. They don't understand that, it's just like any other sport. There's the technique involved. It's a process, and I mean, I can look at you at your age now. You don't train full time anymore, but you can still pick up a bar and you can move a ton of weight really fast with perfect form.
Absolutely.
And it's because you had that base from a young age.
The foundation, I think, weight training, Olympic style lifting primarily, for young athletes is just a prerequisite to wherever you send them. No one says they have to be weightlifters. I think they still need that foundation, however. No other sport can give it to them like that barbell can give it to them.
Sure. And real quick, just to kind of close up, if an athlete is looking to implement Olympic lifting into their training routine, what do you suggest in terms of how do they go about learning how to do the lifts and trying to put that into a training program?
My biggest recommendation, though there's a lot of information now on the internet, ton of information now on Olympic lifting, more so than was ever available to me as an athlete. And there is a lot of good stuff. There's some that I question, but the majority of information online is a decent start, but just to conceptualize, visualize, and get an idea of what they would be doing, but nothing can replace the organic nature of a competent Olympic weightlifting coach. These people starting off, like the question you just asked me, they don't have to find an elite level weightlifting coach. I am a U.S. international. There's only one other level higher than mine. I get assignments by USA Weightlifting to go overseas and take Team USA and compete internationally. I'm blessed that I have that, and any athlete seeking my help, I would love to help them out. But I don't want to stress someone brand new feeling that they have to find that level of coaching.
Right.
There's a lot of coaches. There are a lot of coaches out there now that are competent enough to get them started.
Yeah.
And do so safely. So nothing can beat seeking out a specialist or someone with a lot of information on weightlifting. Period. A secondary avenue would be looking on the internet, because there are some good tutorials and things that they can pick up on.
Thanks for watching, guys. If you're interested in learning more about Danny, go to his website at www.olyconcepts.com. Also, follow SSP Swim on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more updates and information.